Well, if you're just tuning in, welcome to our third annual 2021 San Diego Writers Festival. We want to thank all of our partners at the Coronado Public Library, Warwicks of La Jolla, and the San Diego Memoir Writers Association. We'd also like to thank all of our generous donors, sponsors, and festival exhibitors. Their support allows us to bring this programming to you free of charge. And right now, I am honored and delighted to thank the sponsor of this next event, author and artist Valerie Sussman. Her book, Diary of an Ex-Mad, Ex-Desperate, Ex-Housewife, a visual memoir of divorce, which is coming to a bookstore near you on Valentine's Day 2022. At the age of 50, Valerie found herself facing down the dual demons of divorce and midlife. She unexpectedly reawakened the sleeping giant of her crazy-ass creativity and rediscovered the healing power of play and glue. Diary is a compilation of visual assemblage art and verbal vignettes that show and tell the story of her reluctant journey through the perils, pitfalls, and pratfalls of divorce. Women navigating divorce need lots of support. Diary offers poignant and often hysterical relief to those recovering from a broken marriage and a broken heart, because Spanx and wine are not enough. It's a really good book, friends. I've read it, I love it, and I'm happily married. So everyone needs a copy of this wonderful book. Valerie Sussman is the perfect sponsor for this next event with Laraine Newman. Speaking of, I am so proud and honored to introduce the very talented and lovely Laraine Newman. Hi, Laraine.
Hello.
Hello.
It's so good to see you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
It's so good to see you.
You
I'm going to read your bio, and then I'm going to turn it over to you and Marni, okay?
Okay.
From growing up in Los Angeles with movie star neighbors, bearing witness to the music scene in the 1960s, and seeing the rise of comedy in the early 70s, to studying mime in Paris under the tutelage of Marcel Marceau, to becoming a founding member of the seminal comedy troupe, the Groundlings. It's no wonder that Lorne Michaels offered Laraine Newman a spot in the Saturday Night Live original cast. There, along with the famous cast members John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, Jane Curtis, Garret Morris, and Gilda Radner, Laraine was part of the show that changed TV and comedy forever. But it wasn't all yuks and glamour. Laraine struggled with demons, arriving in New York City with an attraction to drugs that started as a vice and grew to be an all-consuming addiction, even as she skyrocketed to fame via her memorable characters on SNL. May You Live in Interesting Times is a warm, funny, heartfelt snapshot of 1970s New York City and SNL's unexpected rocket to success, with all the giddy headiness that entailed. And believe me, it's a fantastic book. I've listened to it. I love it. With long-term sobriety, Laraine became a parent and reinvented herself as a voiceover actor. She now has a thriving career working on animated favorites, including Finding Nemo, Monsters, Inc., Despicable Me, Inside Out, Shrek, and Minions. Marni and I are delighted to welcome you. Laraine, welcome to the San Diego Writers Festival.
I'm exhausted from that intro. Thank you so much.
Well, wait, but before we talk about your insightful, funny, and oh yes, right. Jane.
Oh, I said her name wrong.
That's all right.
Good. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
I don't think I've ever heard that one before. That's good.
Jane Curtis. So before we talk about your memoir, May You Live in Interesting Times, we at the San Diego Writers Festival are deeply honored to present you with the 2021 Comedy Writing Award of the Year. If you have it on hand, if you would mind.
I hope you can see it because it's clear.
Oh, it is kind of translucent.
It is. Can you see it? I'm now not on screen, so I can't tell what's being seen or not.
Yeah, we can see it.
This is wonderful. Thanks, you guys, so much. This means a lot to me, because I never graduated. I never went to college. So to get a writer's award of any kind is very gratifying. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Yeah, you're such an inspiration. Well, I'm now going to introduce my co-host and my co-founder of the San Diego Writers Festival, Marni Freedman. Marni is a screenwriter, a playwright, an award-winning author, and a writing coach. She leads the Memoir Certificate Program for San Diego Writers, Inc., and produces the San Diego Memoir Writers Association's Theatrical Memoir Showcase. She's also an editor of Shaking the Tree, short, brazen memoir. Marni has 2 award-winning books, 7 essential writing tools that will absolutely make your writing better and enliven your soul, and Permission to Roar for female thought leaders ready to write their book. You can visit her website at marnifreedman.com. And now I'm going to step off and enjoy this interview. Thank you, ladies.
Take a deep breath. Yes.
Hi.
Hello, Miss Lorraine. How are you?
Hi, Marni. I'm
Hi.
good. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. You are absolutely one of my inspirations, probably for a different reason than many people say that about you. For me, it's because of being a writer and listening to this book. Your honesty floored me, and your ability to be intimate with the reader, all the things that we strive for as writers. Phenomenal.
Thank you so much. I was dead set on not sugarcoating things and presenting the reality of the way I saw things, because I recognized, through years of therapy and just maturing, that in order to deal with the unknown, we tell ourselves stories, bad stories that we believe. And I rarely see that written about in memoirs. Everybody kind of puts a pink bow on it. And, I've experienced a lot of failure, and I thought it was important to talk about it. And I can't tell you how many times I've done podcasts with comedians, especially guy comedians. Who are like, I related so much. I was like, really? Gosh. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's this myth out there, and you really spoke to busting it up and talking about the reality. Also something I thought, I honestly thought I was the only person on earth that was raised by a Jewish cowboy.
Oh.
So it was very...
Tell me more.
Well, I had to listen to Ferlin Husky and Conway Twitty. And
wow.
Did you have to listen to that stuff?
It was actually, my dad was born in 1916, so I'm sure he was older than your dad. So it was stuff like, I like mountain music, good old mountain music, played by a real hillbilly band. It was that kind of stuff. It wasn't as sophisticated as
Ferlin Husky, right? Exactly. So just going back to what we were talking about a second ago, how did you, I know when you started to write this, there must have been so much that people wanted you to write about, the expectation. How did you balance that between what you wanted to say, your truth, and what you knew everyone kind of wanted to get to the, those parts?
Yeah, I wanted to write about that stuff too. I wanted to write about the stuff that I felt people would expect, which is SNL. And I felt bad because I couldn't remember a lot of stuff until Fred Armisen pointed out to me, when you're on the show, you don't see the show. You don't know what else is going on. So what I decided to do was to celebrate my favorite sketches. And in doing that, in going back and looking at them and asking, cast members and writers questions about that time, I was able to remember a whole lot of stuff, which accomplished what I was hoping to, which was to give, a living narration of what went on. I thought that would be really entertaining. I hope it's entertaining.
It was. And you did such a good job of recreating those those sketches that had everyone in them, which again, I'm such a writing teacher nerd, but that's really hard to do, to, recreate a sketch. And I found myself laughing just like I had, as if I was watching it.
Thank you. Well, you teach this kind of stuff. I had the luxury of not knowing what the hell I was doing. I've never written a book. I say this in the intro, yes, character monologues, essays, articles, things like that, forwards to books, but never a book. And, when I've seen my friends' books, it's like, oh, chapter headings would have been good. It's just like a stream of consciousness. But I had so much material, Marni.
Yeah.
I had been writing on and off. I started the whole thing when my kids were respectively 7 and 11. They're now 26 and 30.
Wow.
So, there were a lot of breaks, because what I would find is when I would go back and look at a lot of that stuff, I'd get sad and angry at myself, and I would walk around under that gloom for long periods of time. But over time, I realized that there was another way to look at all of it, which was kind of a pop culture journey and evolution, as well as punctuated by my own experience. But believe me, I just didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Even though you didn't, reading your process really does sound like so many of our process. Like you wrote it 9 or 10 times, you put it in a drawer, took it back out. When did you feel like this is what I want to say, had the right balance of, SNL times, your later years, which was also really fascinating. When did you feel like, okay, I got it?
Well, there's just a real meat and potatoes practical answer to that, which was when I worked with an editor. Paul Slansky helped me put all this material together, helped me to put it in chronological order, fact check, saying, God, do I want people to know about this? And he would say, you don't need that, which was a blessing. But I just had so much material, I was stymied, and it just, I knew when I wrote it, when I worked with Paul, that was also the time when I began to see even more how the way in which I could talk about the show.
I don't know if you have it written because it's an audiobook, but if you do, we'd love at some point to hear a portion of it if you have it available.
I do have it on my desktop here. It would just take a second for me to open it.
It'd be really great for people to hear. It's this journey into, it's funny. It makes you cry. Like I said, the honesty of the Hollywood experience, which I've also seen. And I just honor you for going there and for bringing us the full experience, and also allowing us to be with you in those triumphant moments.
Yes.
Which is hard. That's hard too.
Do you want me to? I could read the Bob Hope story.
Yes, please read the Bob Hope story. Yes, please.
Okay, let me minimize this, close this, go to my file that says Chinese curse, manuscript.
Now that's a whole other thing, the name being a Chinese curse. How did you come up with the name? Real quick, let's tell them.
That's actually, it's an urban myth that may you live in interesting times is a Chinese curse.
It's not a Chinese curse?
It's not. It was actually, and I can't remember the name of the Englishman that made it up, but he created it to sound like a Chinese curse. But when I was talking to my kids about the title, they said, you can't say Chinese curse. It's politically incorrect. So I held on to that for a while. I was like, come on, it is a Chinese curse. And then I looked it up and it was like, oh, God, it's not, So I actually just decided to say the actual line of the phrase. And that's how that title came out. And I was able to skirt the issue of it being politically incorrect.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you read whenever you're ready.
Okay.
I also have 3,000 more questions.
Okay. Let's just see. There's Bob Hope is mentioned.
We did a funny thing where we put it out there. What would you want to ask Laraine Newman? I thought, I'll get a couple of questions. I have pages. That's what I had to go through. Yes, pages and cultivate. What were the duplicate questions? And
This seems to be... This is not the right version. Forgive me for taking
No
this
worries, no worries.
Let's see. 2021. Okay, that's why. No.
While you're searching, can I ask you a little bit about this is one thing I was curious about, the concept of bad taste and censorship.
Yes.
Could you speak on that, please?
Well, again, it's like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say you couldn't do that now, because we dealt with, one of the sketches we did was a takeoff on a movie that I doubt a lot of people remember because it was just so wrong. Actually, I could probably read that section.
Please
too.
read anything. Yeah. I really love it when things are wrong. It just feels so good inside my heart.
Yes. Okay. Here we go. So just be prepared for some rough stuff.
I'm prepared.
Okay. As of this writing, I'm pretty sure the movie Mandingo is dim in the memory of most people. If I'm wrong about that, even better, because the wrongness of the movie further enhances the wrongness of our treatment of it in Mandingo 2. Our host that week was O.J. Simpson. In the 1970s, he was at the height of his beauty and fame, MVP and the best runner of that decade. He was unequivocally a legend in his own time. It would have been inconceivable to think him capable of a double murder. O.J.'s show had 2 movie parodies in it, Saturday Night Fever and Mandingo 2. Samurai Night Fever was superb in every sense, writing, performance, and most of all the use of green screen, which was still somewhat new for television. John was terrific in the John Travolta role, managing to convey the Italian flavor of the character with his body as well as his Japanese gibberish. O.J. played the role of Tony's brother, who in the movie wants to quit the priesthood, but in the sketch he just doesn't want to be black anymore. Danny's character, as one of Tony's Goombas, has a great line as they're gathered together at a table in the disco. "This is the life, to be young, stupid, and have no future at all. I love Brooklyn." That line got a big round of applause. The big variable was the green screen working to make an entire disco. When the camera pulls back at the end of the sketch, the disco set disappears and you can see it was just a flat green floor with a green backdrop. That's it. Mandingo 2, however, is probably less remembered except by those of us who were there. Thank God. The movie Mandingo was set in pre-Civil War South. The plot is involved, and I hesitate to say epic, in its twists and relationships. It's got rape, incest, torture, and murder, including infanticide. It is dripping with sex at every turn, the most unsavory and racist content imaginable. So there you have it, the inspiration for Mandingo 2. Increasingly absurd vignettes of lust with increasingly absurd combinations of partnering, along with Danny's incomparable narration. Mandingo 2, where men and women mate like cattle. We open on a tableau in a barn with OJ and me in a passionate embrace. Mandingo says, okay, I'm just sorry, all right. Massa gon' give it to me, but fuss, I'm gon' give it to you. Tell me to stop any time, Marni.
Oh, please continue, please.
All right.
Come on.
My Southern belle responds with, "Take me, Mandingo." Then OJ and I kiss, and as I'm looking over his shoulder, I can see Nicole's face in the audience. Then we see Billy as the plantation overseer in a passionate embrace with Garret, in drag, as he says, "Pleasure me, you ebony wench." Then Billy and Garret grind lips in that fake way children sometimes pretend to make out, their heads rotating wildly. Cutting back and forth between the rising flames at the plantation house, we see configurations of OJ and Garret, me and Garret, who remember, and this is a woman, Billy and OJ making out, and finally, Billy making out with a live cow.
Oh.
The final narration, as the house is engulfed in flames, is Mandingo too. You may hate it. You may be disgusted by it. You may want to throw up on it, but you will never forget Mandingo too.
Which is true.
Yes.
Very true. So what do you feel are the differences between where we were at then and where we're at now?
Well, I think the only thing that really people can really do in terms of political correctness, and I still watch SNL. I absolutely love it, and I love seeing the talent that keeps going through there. Language, people are saying fuck.
Mm-hmm.
They are. They're just beeping it out, and their mouths are clearly saying it. We could never have done that. Certain sex is just so graphic in terms of description, and sometimes even what we're seeing. We could never have done that. But oddly enough, religion is still off the table. We had a sketch that was Jesus's high school reunion with lines like, "Jesus, is that you? Christ, you look good. God, it's good to see you." No, gone, never to be seen again. So, I think really the only thing is sex and language. Religion is still off the table.
Another question that I have for you is, writing about being on drugs, did you ever try to write from the point of view from the drugged out point of view? So, as the person on drugs, what you were experiencing?
Well, the whole aim of the kind of drugs I use, because here's the thing, I never drank alcohol. I've been a teetotaler my whole life. So that's kind of an unusual combination. Usually people drink and do drugs. So what I would have to do is read and eat to come down from Coke. But Coke was the answer to everything because it quieted, the committee that was, doing a can across my brains, saying you are worthless, unlovable, et cetera, things that, all of us go through. But I took it hard. So it's hard to kind of relate the experience of being on drugs because what my goal was white noise, not to think anything. And mission was accomplished. That's exactly what happened.
I thought you did a really beautiful job of how, the way that you process time in those years. It was kind of like coming in and out of clarity and focus, present, and then all of a sudden just gone for a while and then present again.
Nothing's changed.
A lot has changed. You allowed us to go through, I know I'm super geeky with these terms, but the character arc, one of the things that we found in memoir is that the number one character arc is not believing in yourself to believing in yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't set out to find that, but finding that, and that's yours as well.
Well, I suffer from terrible myopia. I never see the big picture. And it took someone like Alan Zweibel to say to me, it has a happy ending. I was like, oh, yeah. I was just like, and then this happened. And then this happened. I didn't really have a perspective on it. So, yeah, it does have a happy ending. I sure feel like I've had a happy ending and continuum, hopefully. I really do enjoy my life, and my perspective is say yes, because you never know where it'll take you. And I've gotten to be part of projects by starting doing projects that paid no money but were just fun. And I would meet people on these projects and we'd become friends, and then they would do something that might lead to a paying job through no design of anybody's. It's just that we all love what we're doing.
Well, I also was thinking that, gosh, if someone put a camera on me or anyone I knew at 23, and if that much pressure, that much intensity, it's such a vulnerable, scary, who am I time.
Well, yeah, I was profoundly immature for my age too. I mean, because Danny is like a couple months younger than me. So he was able to achieve a lot because he just had different brain chemistry, and also a massive, massive talent. So, and in terms of pressure, I think a lot of people think that doing a live show is pressure, but we all came from, improv reviews. That's what we did, especially at the Groundlings. You're in costume, you do your sketch, you run off stage in the dark, change costumes, get back on stage, find your mark, and lights go up. That's exactly what SNL was.
Can you talk a little bit more about the Groundlings and being a founding member there?
Oh, yeah. I actually went to our first show in the theater last night.
Wow.
Everybody was crying, and it was such an amazing, it was all improv because obviously nobody could rehearse sketches, but they're just, oh God, the talent is so dazzling. Well, it started out just as a workshop. It wasn't a theater company. It was just people in a class taking a class. But the people in that class some of them were working actors who just wanted to expand their toolkit. So you had Pat Morita, who became Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid, and Jack Sue, who I knew from this sitcom in the 60s called Valentine's Day with Tony Franciosa, where Tony Franciosa was this swinging bachelor advertising executive, and Jack Sue played his valet. Oh my God. Who was always like, belittling everybody, and getting away with it. Tim Matheson, who eventually, there's so many like 6 degrees and confluences because Tim Matheson eventually played the part that was written for Chevy in Animal House, and Valerie Curtin, who was Barry Levinson's writing partner at the time, was in our company, and she is Jane Curtin's cousin. So there's just, these were all working people. And then other people that were just starting out who eventually went on to become showrunners, for the sitcoms of the 80s and 90s.
I was there around when like Jack Black was in the Groundlings. And so
I didn't know he was in the Groundlings.
Yeah, just the talent that kept, continues to go through there. And this sort of touches on a subject that you talk about, being at the forefront, being sort of a witness to the beginning of things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, again, I was always propelled by my fascination with things, by my, passion for and interest in things. And that put me in these places. That's the only thing I can see is the answer to that, what that is. There's no design to it, obviously. There can't be, because it doesn't exist yet. But, being in LA, there was like a precipice of the beginning of the comedy boom, the opening of the Comedy Store, which was the first of its kind, in that even though there was the Improv, they had music at the Improv. This was just stand-up. And Sammy Shore, who had been this road comic opening for Elvis, everybody thought he was crazy, but the early days of the Comedy Store were really exciting. And there had been the Ash Grove, which had music, and that became the Improv. So it was just... it was like a flower blooming and bursting and all the pollen going out. And, there were clubs on Beverly Boulevard with great drag clubs and all sorts of fantastic stand-ups. And then our company, there was the Groundlings, although we hadn't gotten our name yet, but there was also the Ace Trucking Company. And Funny You Should Ask. And, but I think the Groundlings just kind of, once we started doing shows and the word of mouth, it just exploded.
Wow. So you mentioned music, and that was another thing that I found really interesting about the book is, being that 23, 24, 25-year-old girl, watching these musical legends. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, I am a huge music fan, and there's a lot in the book about music. So hopefully, if you have my kind of taste, you'll be thrilled about the artists that I got to see when I was a teenager.
Honestly, if you're a music fan, you're gonna just eat it up.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, there was one point, there was an IATSE strike. That's the union that does all of the, like the stage hands and things like that.
Mm.
So we recorded one show, we performed one show in Brooklyn in a theater, in a soundstage we'd never been to. And Gilda and I one day were watching the band rehearse,
Mm.
and we just kind of looked at each other and was like, we are really lucky. And to see David Bowie and to see George Harrison and to see Ry Cooder and then see bands that nobody knew anything about, like Elvis Costello and Devo. I mean, that's just, there's no way to
Did you
quantify.
date somebody from Devo?
I dated Mark Mothersbaugh for a long time. We're still
Yeah.
very good friends. He's one of the funniest people I know, and so incredibly talented. Yeah, Mark and I dated for quite some time.
So did you know what was happening as it was happening around you, or was it just going so fast? Were you aware of like the cultural phenomenon that it would become?
No, again, the schedule of the show is such that you're really kind of in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
You're in 8H from, you're there. Sunday's really the only day off, unless we're off for a week, which we would be. And we also had kind of like school schedules in that we were off for summer and Christmas.
Oh, wow.
So quite often I would either go home just to be home or do a movie, which was also thrilling beyond words.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that, when you're in the midst of it, you can have the perspective of the impact it's going to have in the culture. But you're on a hot show.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the concept of the list, when we would have our after party at 1 Fifth Avenue, and, most of us just wanted to eat. We were hungry.
You're just hungry, yeah.
We hadn't had anything between dress and air. There was a meal between dress and air.
As a Jewish mom, that hurts me.
It was terrible.
In my heart, right here.
It was horrible.
Why wasn't there prep services available?
Well, there really wasn't that food. There was coffee. That was it.
Oh.
They didn't know from craft services then, Marni. So we just wanted
Can that be my ringtone, what you just did?
Yes, absolutely. No problem. We had just like slain the late night TV dragon.
Yeah.
And we just want to eat. And then there's like, but there's Brian De Palma and there's
right.
Ford Coppola and there's Clint Eastwood. And it's like, waitress? On the menu, it got to be kind of that was really when you got the sense of, and also, I just watched this movie about Studio 54 and I had no idea the furor about getting in, because we just went right in, we were invited and there was no issue about getting past the velvet rope. So when I saw that movie and about that poor girl who died in the
I saw that
air conditioning vent, my God, I couldn't conceive of that. I took it in stride.
We have a ton of questions for you from Facebook Live. And as I said, my highly curated list here of a gazillion questions. But one of the things I promised, I have a 15-year-old son who is, if you can believe it, right now at improv camp. Not
great.
Selected by me. This is just doing
his own initiative.
Yeah, because I'm terrified of improv, so not be something that I would. Yeah, it's terrifying. And he has had a really up and down week. He'd come home and be like, "Great day," and then he came home yesterday and they said comedy gold, and just like that. And we talked about it, that up and down nature of that experience. And I said I would ask you about that, and if you have any advice for sustaining, keeping getting out there.
The agony and the ecstasy of improv is that it's magic, and it's gone forever once it's done. I mean, now people can record stuff. In my day, we couldn't do that, but still, that is the thing about improv, and they don't always hit. You see a show like Whose Line? That is hours of stuff that they have edited, and those guys are brilliant, but it's never 100%. So, I mean, as long as he has the perspective that, it's always a learning. I mean, Groundlings alumni, we have a class that we take. It's taught by Bill Steinkellner, who is an Emmy Award-winning writer for Cheers, among other shows. And we just all get together and goof around for no particular reason, because it is a muscle. And if you're consistent with it, you can really, and as long as, my advice for a 15-year-old is build your compendium from which you can draw.
Can you say more about that?
Well, a compendium, as you know, is like almost like a filing system. And as long as he sees everything, and this is something I told my kids too, if you want to do this, see everything so that you don't do that. What you do is entirely original. See everything, read as much as you can. Those are the things that, and have life experiences. Those are all things that you feed into this compendium, which is your toolkit.
And something else that I felt as a thread throughout your book was, I don't know if you consciously thought of it as beginner's mind, but I felt like you could put ego aside and be in a space of, I'm going to learn where I'm at right now and bloom right here.
Yeah, I've never thought of it in that way, but I always thought it was important to have a sober, you should pardon the expression, perspective on my place in the world. I was always vigilant to make sure I didn't have any kind of delusions of grandeur, and I might have gone too much in the other direction.
How did you not get caught up in that heady stuff and stay with feet on the ground?
Well, I mean, I did to some extent. I mean, there's some really embarrassing interviews that I gave between the ages of 23 and 27.
They're really funny, though. They're very funny.
No, but still, because I had grown up in Los Angeles and I had seen what this, even though my parents were not in the business, I could see what the business could be like, because, you'd go shopping on Rodeo Drive or whatever, or, on Beverly Drive, and you'd see actors that you recognize from series that were no longer on series, and how transitory any kind of attention is. So I knew about that, and that's why I knew not to assume that. I think it's a Winston Churchill quote, success isn't permanent and failure isn't forever, or something. I'm not saying this. Failure isn't fatal. Success isn't permanent and failure isn't fatal. I knew that inherently.
So I'm going to switch over to some of our questions because they're filing in. I can't keep up. So the first one is that Lorraine mentioned that she had a lot of material to work with, and a lot was cut, some was kept with the support of her editor. What helped you to make those decisions? Is it possible that you'll present the cut material in another form? Ooh, that's an interesting question.
I do. I have a whole piece on Coachella, which would have been like a sidetracking from the trajectory. I love Coachella, and it would have sidetracked the trajectory of the story I was telling. Right. There are a lot of stories. There's more detail to being a cheer mom. The fact that I'm trying to think of what else. There's so much I cut. Just, a lot of it was about my own insecurity, and I thought, I think you've made your point. Let's not dwell on this. There's also the idea that you have to know exactly how much you're willing to expose of yourself. I fell on my sword in a lot of ways, like the story about farting in front of Prince. It's mortifying, but God, it's so funny.
It is funny.
So I will fall on that sword because I want to tell that story. So it's things like that. You make a decision about how exposed you want to be, and what is a cul-de-sac, and what is a
The
trajectory.
thread. Yeah.
story. Yeah.
We often call it like rabbit holes, like, oh, we've gone down, we went off the track, we're
Exactly.
down the
Yeah.
rabbit hole, got to pull
Exactly.
back. And
Yeah.
so would you say the editor really helped you with that through line, that thread?
Absolutely. Yeah. Paul Slansky. He helped Carrie Fisher with her book and Norman Lear, and that's kind of what he does. I mean, he's a writer in his own right, but he really helped me.
You can feel that hand on it. So shout out to editors everywhere.
Yes.
So another question that we have from Gracie is, are there any projects you'd like to do that you haven't done yet? Anything outside your comfort zone? Maybe that's two questions.
Right. Well, acting is outside my comfort zone, and I've done a lot of acting to realize that. So I'd like to, I think I kind of have to leave that behind. I think the last acting I did was on Los Spookies. And I remember reading the script. It was just offered to me, and I read the script, and I said, God, I said to Julio Torres, who wrote it, I really know how to play her. Because that's often really my problem is I can't often understand other people's material, and I don't feel like I can act it convincingly. But with something like this, which was very broad, and I just understood the tone of it, and he said, yeah, I wrote it with you in mind. And she's a real bitch.
So, oh, lovely.
All right. But I just don't feel comfortable working on camera. So what might be considered a bucket list thing and outside the comfort zone, I've already done. I would love to, if I were to work on camera, I would love to just be a supporting player on a show. That's what I can handle, because I don't like responsibility. I'm lazy. So
I don't think that's true.
I would be so grateful to have something like that. But, the niche that I find myself in terms of voiceover, I am so grateful for and feel so lucky about. I mean, I've written stuff. I have a TV show that I've written. I have this show about Coachella. I have another show that I wrote called The Audition, where I have pieces of that in the book, but it's a bigger show. And, I probably should go back to those and really develop them more. So I do have a lot of content. Will you
talk a little bit about the voiceover work? We have a number of questions are coming in about, is there a certain amount of freedom in doing voiceover? What's that like, and what's the difference?
Well, some people will say, you're not using your face, which is a profound aspect of your instrument. You are using your body because there's efforts and things like that, and you can't help it, but you're not using your face. So it's a different skill set. And the people I work with, I'll give you an example. One time I was at my agency auditioning, and within that one day I auditioned for a 5-year-old British girl, a 17-year-old Scottish boy, and an 80-year-old Russian woman. And when I was done, I said, how many people here can do that? And she said, 5. And that's just our agency.
Wow.
But, so the skill set, I don't think people realize what it entails. And then there are the people like Frank Welker and Dee Bradley Baker who do sound effects. And you can't believe the sound effects that they can do. Steve Martin did stand up with Frank Welker, and he told me that Frank once did the sound of a mother duck with her ducklings crossing a stream. All the sounds of the stream, the ducklings, the mother duck.
Wow.
So I mean, it's an amazing skill set, and there is freedom for sure, because when you audition, sometimes you're shown a drawing. There's always a character description, and then it's really up to you to add something that might not be the direct way to go against type, things
Do
like
character monologues still bubble up in your brain? Do different characters pop in? Is that still kind of part of your processing?
No. I mean, I still do voices in everyday conversation because they express things so beautifully to me. But character monologues, no.
They don't. How did they come to you before? Was it just an organic, just listening to the way people talk?
Yeah, when you create a character, I mean, I know this sounds kind of hokey, but they really write themselves.
Mm,
Because if you create a character and you understand that character, and they're all drawn from people you know that person's point of view. And so it's really easy to write them.
so just because our time is running short and I want to get to a few of these other questions that were asked, one of the threads in the book is about loss, unexpected loss, expected loss. And I was wondering if by looking back on it all, if you had any perspective on the concept of loss.
Well, other than the cliche of, you never know what's going to happen, and each day is
Mm-hmm.
what you've got that day.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that obvious thing that everybody says, I can't really say. I mean, I know in my own personality, I'm prone to denial. So it's like, yeah, I know at that time, I know most people die from ovarian cancer, but my friend won't,
Yeah.
and that's often, the situation with me. And it was with my mother too. She's going to make it.
You wrote so beautifully about that time with Gilda Radner and then your mom passing in that time period.
Within a month of each other, yeah.
Yeah, it's really touching and heartfelt. Another thing that people were wondering about is the threat of motherhood, which seemed to really create a shift in you, a shift in perspective on life. And wondering if you can say a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, I feel so fortunate that I got to be a mother, because I never was interested in kids. I was, all my friends around me were so rabid to have babies. And I was like, whatever, I want to just go over here, not worry about that. But I found myself pregnant, and I thought, well, if not now, when? Having no idea that it would be my purpose. Children give you a purpose, and they exonerate you from self, which is a wonderful thing. Life becomes much more pragmatic. So it's like, I want that job because I want to be able to pay for tuition. It's not about what it means about me,
Right.
and that's a wonderful release.
Mm-hmm.
But my kids are an endless source of joy and fun, and my kids were always interesting people and always fun people, and
they're doing so well.
I know. I'm so happy for both of them.
Let's talk a little bit about the end of the book. When I had interviewed Piper Kerman, who wrote Orange is the New Black, she was talking about the end of her book, and she said it was like putting an octopus to bed. All these arms, And I thought about that when I was reading yours, because you didn't sugarcoat it. It wasn't like wrapped in a bow, but I felt like all those arms got tucked in to bed.
Oh, good.
So I was just wondering what you thought about wrapping it up. What were your struggles or thoughts on that?
Well, it's much more meat and potatoes and pragmatic, in the sense that I just, here's what's happening now. Here's what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now. I didn't really, there was no design to the way I ended it, other than to say that I love my life now, that I'm so lucky and so fortunate. And here's all the things that I'm interested in that I get to do.
Mm-hmm. It feels kind of like puzzle pieces kind of clicking together, where before you were in a, confusing space, and then, and I just, a shout out for anyone that hasn't listened to it yet. Oh, wait a second. Are you going to, this came up so many times, are you going to put it in written form?
That is not the business model for Audible. So you sign a contract and you cannot put it in written form for a while. So I wish I could, because personally, and I know I shouldn't be saying this, but my mind wanders when I listen to a book. So you miss stuff.
Well,
I'm
and
much
as
better
a
reading.
visual person, like you want to just go back and highlight
Yes,
and,
I know.
you know,
I
oh, that's
agree.
interesting.
But no, it's not for some time, unfortunately.
Do you plan on writing other books?
Books, I don't know. But shows, you know, like stage shows for the Groundlings, which is they're nice enough to let me, they've, you know, I've done the audition at the Groundlings, that show, and I've done Coachella just at like, you know, spoken word performances, but I want to expand that because it's such a fun piece.
So my co-host and co-partner in crime is back on.
I see.
And before we move on to anything else, I do want to say, if you haven't listened to this book, it's a full journey. It's honest, it's raw, it's absolutely funny. She takes you there to the places that you're curious about, and just gives an unflinching, you know, you let us into your heart, and you let us into your experience in a way that I rarely see.
Thank you.
It was just beautiful.
Thank you so much, Marni.
Yeah, that was
Honor to
really
meet you.
beautiful.
Pleasure to meet you. This was fun. Am I supposed to skedaddle now?
I don't know. Nobody knows.
What do we do?
What am I supposed to do, Jennifer? Tell
Jennifer,
me.
what's happening?
The voice in the sky. I want to say thank you, Lorraine and Marni. That was such a beautiful interview. I got the pleasure of interviewing Lorraine as well. And it's so interesting how we all have a different take, but I was so moved by your book and your story. And yeah, the honesty, and it's so raw, and just, I hope people read your book. I know so many people I talked to are like, oh my gosh, they were so excited about this segment. So we will let you go about your day, but please feel free to join us and watch. We have a lot of great talent.
Thank you so much for this.
And please come back if writing anything. We would love to have you.
You betcha. Okay, guys.
Awesome.
It's an honor.